Chapter 1: The Night of the Blood Moon. The night was alive. The air itself trembled beneath the blood moon's rise, a swollen crimson orb hanging over the silver-spined mountains of Lyra Vale. The world below lay in a hush, the kind of silence that only comes before destiny strikes. Mist crawled between ancient trees like restless ghosts. The wind carried whispers of war, of prophecy, of wolves who once ruled both man and moon. And beneath that haunted sky stood a girl who didn't yet know she was chosen. Lyra de Celeste. Her name itself sounded like music written in light. With hair that shimmered silver in the moonlight and eyes caught between storm and starlight, she looked like she had stepped out of an old tale. But Lyra wasn't a goddess. Not yet. She was a healer, a wanderer, trying to survive the echoes of a dying world. She pressed her palms against the cool bark of a cedar tree, her breath sharp and shallow. The mark on her wrist, a strange sigil shaped like a crescent burning within a circle, had begun to glow again, bright enough to illuminate the forest around her. "Not again," she whispered, voice trembling. The pain wasn't human. It was ancient, like the moon itself was carving its memory into her skin. Somewhere beyond the woods, a howl rose, deep, commanding, and heartbreakingly lonely. Another followed, but this one different, rougher, wilder. Two howls echoing as one, clashing like thunder in the night. Lyra fell to her knees. She didn't know why she felt it, the pull, the ache, the heartbeat that wasn't hers, but she knew what it meant. The curse of Solara Moongrace was waking again. Far from her, across the vale, the Draven twins stirred. In the fortress of black stone that crowned the mountain, Caliph Draven stood on the balcony, his golden eyes catching firelight. His chest rose and fell with the rhythm of a beast barely contained. He was all sharp edges, scarred arms, inked veins, and the kind of jaw carved by both rage and regret. "You feel that?" he muttered, his voice rough as gravel. Behind him, calm and silent as snow, Alaric Draven turned from the moonlit window. His eyes, silver like frost, narrowed. "The mark burns again." "Aye," Caliph growled. "She's here. For centuries the Draven twins had carried the same curse. Two souls born of one prophecy, one light, one shadow, both bound by the goddess Solara's vengeance. They were two halves of the same destiny, and yet their bond had always been a fragile truce. But tonight, that truce began to fracture." Caliph's hand curled around the stone railing until cracks spread through it. "If the prophecy's true, she belongs to one of us." Alaric's gaze didn't waver. "Or she'll destroy us both." A gust of wind howled through the tower, carrying the faintest scent, rain, moonfire, and wild jasmine. Lyra's scent. Caliph's wolf stirred. He inhaled sharply, pupils narrowing to amber slits. "By the gods," he breathed, "she's real." Back in the woods, Lyra stumbled forward, clutching her burning wrist. Her heartbeat synced with the distant howls. Each pulse of her mark sent waves of silver light through the forest floor, waking slumbering roots, shaking loose the crows from their nests. The world was answering her, or warning her. Then, through the trees, she saw them. Two shadows descending from opposite ridges. Wolves the size of stallions, one cloaked in silver fur that shimmered like moonlight, the other black as midnight flame. Their eyes locked on her, her breath caught. The silver wolf's gaze softened, familiar, almost protective. But the dark one, his growl rolled like thunder, primal and possessive. They circled her like twin storms, one calm, one chaos. The mark on her wrist flared, binding her fate to theirs with a searing light. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice barely a breath. And though they were beasts, she swore she heard the answer, a whisper carried by the night itself. "Yours." The ground quaked. The moon bled red, and the story of shadows of the twin alphas truly began. Chapter 2: The Wolves of Silver and Shadow. The forest of Duskvale had never known silence quite like this. It wasn't peace, it was the kind of quiet that breathed before a storm, thick with tension, humming with unseen power. The canopy was painted in 100 shades of silver as moonlight fell through the ancient trees, igniting the mist like whispers of ghosts. And beneath that eerie glow, two shadows moved, fluid, deadly, beautiful. Draven's breath came out in clouds, each exhale tinged with heat from his shifting pulse. His wolf form, the wolf of Shadowfire, was an obsidian blur of power, eyes burning red against the night. Across the clearing, his twin, Alaric Draven, stood poised and silent, silver fur glinting beneath the blood moon, eyes the color of tempered steel. One was chaos, the other control. Yet both carried the same bloodline curse. Two souls born under one moon, fated to destroy or save each other. They circled each other in a clearing littered with fallen leaves and the faint scent of old magic. The air crackled with tension. Between them, invisible but palpable, was the prophecy that bound their fates, that only one alpha could reign. The moon, as if aware, hung lower, watching like a silent witness, hidden behind the ancient roots of an oak. Lyra de Celeste watched the confrontation unfold, her heart pounding like a trapped bird. Her long auburn hair shimmered faintly under the moonlight, her silver eyes reflecting both wolves in their primal glory. She had seen them fight before, but never like this. Tonight was different. Tonight, the blood in their veins sang to the curse that haunted their lineage. Kaelith growled, a low rumble that sent vibrations through the earth. "Step aside, brother," he said, his voice raw, half-human. The moon's blessing was never meant to be shared. Alaric's silver wolf eyes narrowed, the light of calm defiance flickering within them. "A moon doesn't bless those who burn everything they touch, Kaelith." He stepped forward, his claws sinking into the soft moss. "This isn't about power, it's about balance." Lyra could feel their words like ripples through her soul. The prophecy had always spoken of two alphas born of one blood, one to wield shadow, one to wield light, and a heart that would decide their fate. That heart, she realized with growing dread, was hers. A sudden wind rose, carrying the scent of iron and rain. The trees shuddered as lightning flashed across the horizon, illuminating the twin wolves in a moment of raw, mythic beauty, silver and black, destiny and defiance, light and darkness. Their roars collided like thunder, and the forest came alive with their fury. Kaelith lunged first, a blur of darkness. Alaric countered, their bodies clashing midair with bone-shaking force. Claws tore into fur, growls mingled with human screams, and magic crackled where their blood touched the earth. The ground itself responded, ancient runes glowing beneath the soil, pulsing with the energy of the curse that had birthed them. Lyra gasped as a wave of power surged through the forest, knocking her backward. The oak tree behind her split open slightly, revealing faint silver veins of moonlight running through its bark, the mark of the moon's first blessing. Her palms trembled as she pressed against it, realizing the battle wasn't just physical, it was spiritual, and the forest itself was choosing sides. Then she heard it, a whisper, faint but unmistakable, the voice of Solara Moongrace, the moon priestess of legend. And the heart of the moon must choose, child of starlight, for shadow and silver cannot share the same sky. Lyra's breath caught. Her destiny had never felt so heavy. As the two brothers tore into each other with blood and fury, she knew the time for hiding was over. The moment her foot touched the clearing, the wind stilled, as though the entire forest was holding its breath. Kaelith froze mid-strike, his crimson eyes locking on her, wild with surprise and something deeper, longing perhaps. Alaric, bleeding but unbroken, turned too, his expression shifting from battle-born fury to quiet awe. The moonlight intensified, bathing Lyra in silver flame. In that instant both wolves fell silent. The curse had been waiting for her, and as her voice broke the silence, trembling, ethereal and filled with the weight of destiny, the world itself seemed to tremble. "If one must fall," she whispered, her voice a melody carried by the wind, "then let it be the moon that decides." The blood moon flared crimson, and everything changed. Chapter 3: The Heart of the Curse. The world seemed to still after Lyra's whisper faded into the night. The wind fell silent. Even the forest, alive moments ago with the violence of two alphas, stood in reverent quiet. Only the blood moon remained, bleeding crimson light upon the clearing where fate itself had paused to listen. Kael stood half-shifted now, chest rising and falling with feral intensity. Blood streaked his jaw, but his eyes were fixed on Lyra with something unspoken, a raw primal hunger laced with awe. Alaric remained in his wolf form, fur matted with silver blood, but his gaze was the same, piercing, sorrowful, and full of questions that no prophecy could answer. Lyra's knees trembled, the pulse of the moon's power still coursing through her veins. The air around her shimmered faintly, laced with threads of silver light that moved as if alive. She felt it, the ancient magic awakening inside her, the same magic that had bound the Draven twins since birth. Her hands glowed faintly where moonlight touched them, the symbol of a crescent forming against her palm. A whisper of cold brushed her cheek. "Solara Moongraces." Voice returned, softer now, as though speaking directly into her soul. "The heart that binds must choose not with love alone, but with truth." Lyra gasped, her eyes darting between the two brothers. The word untruth echoed in her chest like a heartbeat. But what truth? She barely knew what role she played in this cursed prophecy, only that her bloodline was connected to the first moon priestess, and her fate had been sealed long before her birth. Kael took a step forward, his human form emerging fully as the last of his fur vanished into smoke. He looked every bit the dark alpha, raven black hair tousled, jaw sharp, muscles corded with tension, his crimson eyes softening only when they met hers. "Lyra," his voice cracked with emotion, low and dangerous. "You don't understand. You can't be here. The curse feeds on your light." Alaric shifted then, the sound of snapping bones and dissolving silver fur echoing through the clearing. When he rose, he was the mirror to Kael, the same face but tempered by calm. His silver eyes held none of his brother's storm, yet the depth of his gaze could still drown worlds. "She's the only one who can end it," Alaric said quietly, stepping closer. "The curse isn't about dominance, it's about balance, and the moon has chosen her as the tether." Lyra felt the words pierce her chest like blades. Her heartbeat raced as the moonlight pulsed brighter around her. She wanted to speak, but her throat was dry, caught between fear and the unbearable weight of destiny. The ground trembled suddenly, breaking their fragile moment. From the edge of the forest, shadows began to move, dark figures cloaked in the scent of blood and ash. Kael's eyes snapped toward the movement, his expression turning to stone. "The Valhart pack," he growled, voice like gravel, "and Ronan is here." A name sent a shiver down Lyra's spine. She remembered the rumors. Ronan Valhart, the fallen alpha whose ambition had nearly shattered the southern packs. If he was here, then the curse wasn't the only danger tonight. From between the trees, Fornan Valhart emerged. Tall and broad, his dark brown hair streaked with silver, his eyes the cold blue of winter steel. Behind him, his wolves fanned out, silent and ready. His gaze swept the scene, The twins, the blood, the trembling moonlight around Lyra, and a slow, knowing smile curved his lips. "So it's true," Ronan said, his voice deep and venomous. "The moon's heart walks among mortals. Tell me, Lyra, did the curse also tell you whose blood you were meant to spill?" Kaelith's body shifted instinctively, positioning himself in front of Lyra, the growl in his throat echoing through the clearing. Alaric mirrored the motion, but his eyes were on Ronan, measuring, calculating. Lyra took a step back, her pulse thundering in her ears. The forest around them seemed to darken, the mist thickening like smoke. Her power, still raw and untamed, pulsed again in answer to her fear. Silver threads of energy unfurled from her fingertips, crackling through the air. Ronan's wolves tensed. The scent of magic and blood merged until the night was suffocating. Kaelith turned, his eyes meeting Lyra's, and for a moment something ancient passed between them, a bond neither fully understood. "And stay behind me," he whispered. "If he touches you, I'll rip his heart out." Alaric's tone was softer but no less commanding. "No, Lyra, focus. Feel the moon. It's calling you for a reason. Don't fight it. Let it guide you." The twins stood side by side now, darkness and light united for the first time since their birth. Ronan smiled, lifting his hand. His wolves lunged. And under the blood moon's crimson eye, the first war between shadow, silver, and prophecy began. Chapter 4. The Howl of War. The clearing erupted into chaos. The stillness of prophecy shattered as Ronan's wolves charged forward, their eyes glowing with a savage hunger that spoke of centuries of resentment. The blood moon burned above, casting long, twisted shadows that seemed to dance with every strike and roar. Kaelith was the first to move, a dark blur that exploded into the heart of Ronan's pack. His transformation was instant, brutal, beautiful. Bones cracked, muscle shifted, and his black wolf emerged, flames of crimson streaking through his fur. His roar split the night, shaking the very trees as claws met flesh. Beside him, Alaric shifted with equal grace, his silver wolf gliding through the battlefield like living moonlight. Where Kaelith's rage scorched, Alaric's precision sliced. They fought as if they were halves of one ancient weapon, forged for destruction, bound by blood. Ronan Valhart stood unmoving for a moment, arms crossed, eyes glowing coldly blue. His wolves swarmed around him, howls filling the forest. Then, with deliberate calm, he stepped forward. The power rolling off him was suffocating, a dark alpha aura that crackled through the air. He didn't shift immediately. He didn't have to. Power radiated from his very skin. Lyra stood at the edge of the chaos, trembling as energy flared around her. Every blow, every roar, every flash of blood seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. She could feel the magic of the moon weaving through the forest, wrapping itself around the twins and their enemy alike. Her palms still glowed faintly, silver symbols shimmering beneath the skin. Suddenly, Ronan's voice cut through the storm. "Tell me, Lyra de Celeste, do you truly think you can save them?" His tone was mocking, but his gaze was deadly serious. As he spoke, his form shifted, massive bones stretching, fur of storm gray erupting across his frame. When he stood as a wolf, he was monstrous. Taller than Kaelith, broader than Alaric, with scars etched deep into his flank, the marks of an alpha who had conquered and survived. His howl rolled across the valley like thunder. Kaelith lunged first, their bodies colliding with a sound that cracked the earth beneath them. Blood sprayed across the moss, and Lyra screamed as their claws tore through each other. The air filled with the sound of tearing flesh and the scent of iron. Alaric joined in moments later, striking Ronan's side with a precision born of centuries-old discipline. But Ronan barely flinched, He caught Alaric mid-strike and slammed him into the ground with terrifying force. "Brother!" Kaelith roared, his human voice merging with his wolf snarl. He turned, but Ronan was faster. A paw like steel caught him across the face, sending him crashing into a fallen tree. Lyra ran forward before she realized what she was doing. "Stop!" she screamed, her voice breaking through the frenzy. "The curse is feeding on this." But no one could hear her. The forest was drenched in violence. The moonlight flickered as if afraid. Her tears fell hot against her skin as she knelt beside Alaric's bleeding form. His silver fur was stained red, but his eyes still shone with calm resolve. "Lyra," he rasped, voice weak but steady. "You have to awaken it. The heart of the moon, inside you." She shook her head, panicked. "I don't know how." He managed a faint smile. "You do, it's in your blood. Feel it. Not with fear, but with truth." Kaelith roared again, breaking through the haze of bloodlust. He stood, battered but unbroken, and charged Ronan with renewed fury. This time, his movements weren't wild. They were precise, fueled by something deeper than rage. The twins' eyes met briefly across the chaos, and for the first time, understanding passed between them. Silver and shadow united. Their howls rose together, a haunting harmony that shook the very stars. The air around them twisted, energy rippling outward like waves from an unseen core. Lyra felt it. The pull of the prophecy, the heartbeat of the moon itself answering their call. Her vision blurred as light erupted from her palms, illuminating the battlefield in pure silver radiance. The wolves stopped mid-fight. Even Ronan faltered, his massive form growling uncertainly as the light grew brighter, stronger. Lyra's eyes turned white, glowing with the force of the moon priestess. The sigil on her palms expanded, spilling across her arms like living fire. She rose, no longer trembling. Her voice was not her own when she spoke. It carried the resonance of ages. "By the moon that binds blood and fate, let the heart of shadow and light remember its origin." A deafening pulse exploded outward. Every wolf was thrown to the ground. The trees bent, the mist dissolved, and for a brief moment the sky cleared, revealing a full moon pure and untainted by blood. When the light faded, silence returned. Ronan lay sprawled across the clearing, unconscious but breathing. The Draven twins were on their knees, human once more, panting and bloodied but alive. Lyra collapsed beside them, her strength spent. The world shimmered faintly, as though the forest itself sighed in relief. But deep in the shadows, unseen eyes watched, and a whisper moved through the trees. Chapter 5: Echoes of the Moonblood. Dawn broke in shades of ash and silver, spilling across the wounded forest. Smoke curled gently from the charred earth where magic had kissed the ground, and the scent of blood lingered in the air. The blood moon had finally faded, leaving behind the eerie calm of aftermath, a silence that felt too heavy, too still. Lyra woke to the sound of wind whispering through the trees, her body aching as if she had carried the moon itself. The forest canopy above her was veined with pale light, and dew clung to her lashes like frozen tears. Every inch of her felt hollow, yet her veins still thrummed faintly with power, the echo of something vast, ancient, and alive. She turned slowly, finding Kaelith and Alaric beside her. Both were unconscious, their bodies marred by bruises and blood, but breathing. The twins lay opposite one another, almost mirror reflections. One cloaked in shadow, the other bathed in light. The sight struck her with a strange ache, as though the universe itself were trying to speak through symmetry. The silence was broken by a low hum, the sound of energy pulsing beneath the soil. The symbols of the moon priestess still glowed faintly around the clearing, carved into roots and stones. Lyra pressed a trembling hand to one of them. The moment her skin touched the sigil, her vision blurred, and the world around her shifted. The forest dissolved into silver mist. The air grew cold, and from the haze emerged the outline of a woman draped in flowing white. Lyra Moongrace, the first moon priestess, her face both luminous and sorrowful. Child of starlight, Lyra's voice drifted like a song through the fog. You have awakened the heart, but the bond is still fractured. The curse of the twin alphas runs deeper than the moon's reach. Until it is healed, the world will bleed. Lyra bowed her head, her voice breaking. How do I heal it? Tell me what to do. Lyra's eyes, pale as the full moon, softened. To heal a curse born of blood, you must face the truth of it. The moon blood runs through the Draven line, and through yours. Lyra froze. Mine? She whispered. The priestess nodded. Your ancestor was not merely chosen by the moon, she was bound to it, her soul interwoven with the Draven twins' origin. That is why your heart stirs the curse. You are the last of the moonblood, the living key to either salvation or destruction. Before Lyra could speak again, the mist trembled and shadows began to coil around the vision. Lyra's face darkened, her voice sharpening like wind before a storm. But beware. The heart that heals can also divide. One will rise to protect you, the other to claim you, and the blood you choose will determine the fate of them all. The vision shattered. Lyra gasped and fell back, the sigil dimming beneath her touch. Her chest burned with the weight of prophecy. The twins stirred behind her. Kaelith's voice was the first she heard, rough and low. You called the moon. His eyes opened, dark, feral, but strangely calm. You saved us. Alaric rose beside him, his silver gaze softer, searching her face. No, he said quietly. She didn't just save us, she bound us. Tighter than ever. The twins exchanged a look that made the air tighten. Kaelith's jaw flexed, a muscle twitching as he glanced away. Alaric's expression was unreadable, somewhere between awe and caution. Lyra tried to speak, but her throat felt heavy with secrets. She could still hear Lyra's words, and the moon blood runs through yours. Before she could reveal what she had seen, a new sound reached them. Faint at first, then unmistakable, the distant rhythm of drums, war drums. Kaelith was on his feet in an instant. Valhart, he hissed. He's regrouped. Alaric stood too, eyes scanning the horizon where smoke was beginning to rise once more. He won't rest until the Moonheart is his. Lyra clenched her fists, silver light flickering between her fingers. Then he'll have to walk through fire to get it. Kaelith's lips curved into a dark smile. That can be arranged. The three of them stood beneath the dying dawn, bound by prophecy, blood, and something far more dangerous, the spark of destiny that could ignite the world. Above them, the clouds began to part, revealing the pale morning moon, faint, watching, waiting. And far away, in the ruins of the old Valhart fortress, Ronan Valhart opened his eyes. His wounds were already healing, his rage simmering like molten steel. Beside him, the shadow of another figure lingered, cloaked, silent, ancient. The figure's voice slithered like smoke. You felt it too, didn't you? The moonblood has awakened. Ronan's jaw clenched. Then we'll take it, even if it means burning the heavens. The stranger smiled, revealing eyes like dying stars. Then the war for the moon begins anew. Chapter 6, The Bond of Fire and Frost. The moon had retreated behind the clouds, veiling itself from the brewing storm. The forest of Duskvale lay cloaked in silver mist, its air thick with the scent of dew, blood, and magic yet untamed. A new dawn had begun, but its light brought no peace. The war drums had ceased, replaced by the restless whisper of an approaching fate. Within the heart of the Draven stronghold, a citadel carved into the mountain's spine, torches flickered, their flames casting uneven shadows across the stone walls. The air inside was heavy, humming faintly with ancient enchantments that had once protected the Alpha line. Now, those wards trembled, as if unsure which bloodline to obey. Lyra sat near the central hearth, wrapped in a cloak of wolfskin. Her thoughts swirled like the smoke rising above her, tangled, burning, relentless. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw flashes of Solara's warning, 2 brothers, 1 heart, and the blood that would decide the world's fate. The mark on her wrist pulsed again, brighter now, in rhythm with the flickering flames. Kael stood near the doorway, his arms crossed, every muscle taut. The faint scratches and bruises from the battle had already begun to heal, but something darker haunted his expression. His golden eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, watching Lyra as though she were both his salvation and his undoing. Across the hall, Alaric moved with quiet purpose, tracing runes into the floor with a piece of silver chalk. His focus was sharp, his movements precise, every stroke part of a protection sigil older than memory. Yet beneath his calm surface, the air around him shimmered with restrained power. It was Kael who broke the silence first. "You shouldn't have come with us," he said, voice low, a growl hidden beneath control. "The Valhart pack will stop at nothing. You're safer far from here." Lyra didn't look up. "There's no safe anymore, Kael. Not when my blood is what they're hunting." Alaric's gaze flicked up from the floor. "She's right." Kael's jaw tightened. "You'd have her fight?" "She's not one of us." Alaric stood, meeting his brother's glare. "She's more than that. She's the key to ending what we began." Their eyes locked, gold against silver, fire against frost. The tension between them was almost tangible, as if the air itself held its breath. Lyra could feel their energy pulsing through the room, clashing like twin storms, and beneath it, something else stirred. The bond that had begun to awaken since the blood moon's rise. Without warning, the mark on Lyra's wrist flared to life, and pain lanced through her arm. She gasped, clutching it as streams of silver light bled from her skin. The runes on the floor blazed in answer, reacting to her energy. Alaric and Kael moved toward her at once. "Lyra!" Alaric caught her by the shoulders, steadying her as her body trembled. "Breathe. Don't fight it." Kael knelt beside them, his hand gripping hers. "You're drawing too much power. It'll tear through you." Her voice came out broken, trembling. "It's not me. It's calling you both." The light around her expanded, weaving threads of gold and silver that wrapped around the twins like ribbons of living magic. Kael cursed under his breath but didn't pull away. Alaric closed his eyes, feeling the current surge through his veins, a pulse both alien and familiar. For a fleeting moment their hearts beat as one. Then it happened. The fire in Kael's chest and the frost in Alaric's veins collided. Magic, primal, and volatile, surging into Lyra's body. The room exploded in light. Symbols burned across the walls, torches flared with unnatural heat. The bond that had slept beneath their blood awoke, screaming with power. When the light dimmed, Lyra was on the floor, gasping for air. Kael and Alaric staggered apart, both pale, eyes glowing faintly with twin marks of the moon now etched across their collarbones, one crimson, one silver. Lyra blinked through the haze. What just happened?" Alaric steadied himself against the wall, voice heavy. "The bond of fire and frost. It's ancient. The moonblood just reawakened it." Kael flexed his hand, watching as faint tendrils of smoke curled from his skin. "So we're tied to her now." His tone was dark, conflicted. "Perfect." Lyra met his gaze, her voice quiet but unwavering. Not tied, she said softly, connected, and the more you fight it, the stronger it'll pull. Silence settled again, but this time it pulsed with something new, something alive. Beyond the citadel walls, thunder rolled across the horizon. The scent of rain and war filled the air. Far below, in the shadowed woods, a scout from the Valhart pack watched the flickering light from the mountain fortress. He smiled, baring sharp teeth. Then, lifting a horn carved from bone, he blew a low, echoing note into the night. And the call of war answered once more. Chapter 7. The Veil of Secrets. Morning broke over Duskvale with a pale, hesitant light. The mist that clung to the mountain slopes shimmered faintly, as though holding the breath of the night's lingering magic. Birds dared not sing. The forest had gone still, and even the wind seemed to whisper cautiously between the ancient trees. The world itself felt as though it awaited revelation. Inside the citadel, the aftermath of the bond's awakening still rippled through the air. Lyra's mark no longer glowed, but its presence throbbed beneath her skin like a heartbeat. She had not slept. Neither had the twins. Alaric stood by the window, his silver eyes fixed on the horizon where the first light touched the fog. He looked calmer than the chaos beneath his surface. The bond pulsed faintly in his chest. He could feel Lyra's emotions flickering through him like a faint echo, her uncertainty, her strength, her fear. He inhaled sharply and turned away. Kaelith, meanwhile, had retreated to the training yard. His movements were sharp, his blade slicing through the air in furious precision. Every strike was a release, every swing a rebellion against the pull he could no longer deny. The fire that burned within him had always been his power, his curse, his pride. Now it was tethered, shared. He hated it. Lyra found him there, the cold wind catching in her hair as she stepped into the open yard. The morning light painted her in gold, softening the exhaustion in her eyes. For a moment Kaelith froze mid-strike, his blade glinting under the sun. "You're going to wear yourself out," she said gently. He didn't look at her. "Better that than being someone's puppet." Lyra's brow furrowed. "You think I wanted this, that I chose to bind you?" His jaw clenched. "You didn't have to. It's in your blood. It's what you are." She took a slow step forward. "And what am I, Kaelith?" He finally turned, his golden eyes fierce, but beneath the fury something softer trembled. "Dangerous," he said, voice low. "To me, to him, to yourself." Before she could reply, Alaric appeared at the edge of the yard, his calm presence cutting through the tension. "Enough," he said simply. "There's something you both need to see." The three of them descended into the lower chambers, rooms carved deep into the rock where the walls hummed faintly with trapped energy. Dust lay thick on the floor, disturbed only by Alaric's footprints. At the end of the corridor, a massive door stood sealed with moonsteel, its surface etched with runes that pulsed faintly at their approach. "This is the Archive of Shadows," Alaric explained. "It holds the records of every Alpha before us, their victories, their failures, and their curses." Lyra's eyes widened. "You think the truth about the Moonblood is here?" Alaric nodded. "I think it's where it all began." Kaelith frowned. "You've never opened it before." "I couldn't," Alaric admitted. "The seal reacts only to the bond. It required all three of us." The realization settled between them, a heavy truth none could escape. The bond wasn't just a curse, it was a key. Lyra reached out, her hand trembling slightly as she placed her palm against the cold metal. The mark on her wrist flared, and light spilled from the runes like veins of molten silver. Kaelith and Alaric followed suit, their hands pressing beside hers. The air thickened, vibrating with ancient power. The door groaned open. Beyond it lay a vast chamber illuminated by blue flame. Shelves of old tomes stretched into shadow, their spines bound in wolfhide and silver. Symbols glowed faintly across the floor, forming a circular seal at the center. At its heart stood a pedestal, and upon it a single blackened scroll. Lyra stepped forward first. The scroll pulsed faintly as she approached, like something alive. When she touched it, the air around them rippled, and whispers filled the room. Blood of the moon, children of the twin flame, when fire and frost unite, the veil shall break. The whisper came from nowhere and everywhere, feminine, ancient, and heavy with sorrow. Lyra stumbled back. Who said that? Alaric caught her arm. The scroll's enchanted. It's a voice from the ancestors. Kaelith stepped closer, eyes narrowing at the pedestal. What veil? The whisper deepened, carrying through the chamber like wind through a grave. The veil that hides the truth of what you were born to destroy and what you were born to become. Suddenly, the flames around them dimmed, replaced by a vision that filled the room. Wolves of shadow and light locked in eternal battle, their howls echoing across the void. Between them stood a woman cloaked in silver fire, her face obscured, her hands outstretched as if holding back the world itself. Lyra's breath caught. That woman, Alaric whispered. It's her, the first Alpha, the one who made the pact with the moon. Kaelith's fists clenched. Then she's the reason we're cursed. No, Lyra said softly. She's the reason we're still alive. The vision faded, leaving only the echo of her last words behind. Find the veil of secrets before the shadow does. As silence reclaimed the room, the three stood there, bound by blood, fate, and something neither could yet name. Outside, thunder rumbled across the mountains once more. The storm was coming, and with it, the truth that would break them all. Chapter 8: The Rise of the Shadow Pack. The storm that had whispered on the horizon finally broke. Rain lashed against the mountains like 1,000 claws, and the forests below shivered under the weight of thunder. From the high cliffs of Duskvale, the Draven stronghold loomed, its towers lit by flashes of lightning, its walls echoing with the roar of the coming tempest. But it wasn't the weather that stirred the wolves of the north that night. It was war. Far below, beneath the dripping canopies of the Blackwood Forest, the Shadow Pack gathered. Their leader stood tall on them, a beast cloaked in darkness, his fur as black as the void, his eyes burning with a strange crimson glow. He was called Ravok, the Alpha of Shadows, a name whispered in fear even among his own kind. His presence was like a living wound in the air, consuming warmth, light, and mercy. Around him, his warriors, wolves twisted by ancient curses, crouched low, their snarls blending with the rain. The veil weakens, Ravok said, his voice deep and fractured, echoing through the storm. The moon blood has awakened the twins. The balance trembles. A wolf stepped forward, a female with silver scars across her muzzle. Then the prophecy is true, she rasped. The fire and frost have bonded to the heart of the moon. Ravok's grin bared sharp, uneven teeth. Good. Let them find the veil. Let them uncover the truth. And when they do... He raised his head to the rain-soaked sky. We'll be waiting on the other side. Thunder crashed as if the heavens themselves answered him. In the citadel above, the storm's fury mirrored the unrest within. Kaelith paced before the hearth, his golden eyes glinting like twin embers. The news from the outer sentries had been grim. Several outposts had gone silent, and the Valhart scouts had vanished without trace. They're testing the borders, Kaelith growled. The Shadow Pack is moving. Alaric looked up from a spread of maps and scrolls that littered the table before him. His voice was calm but edged with unease. They're not just moving, they're hunting. Lyra stood near the window. the stormlight catching the silver threads in her hair. Her mark glowed faintly beneath her sleeve, pulsing in rhythm with the thunder. "Hunting what?" she asked quietly. Kaelith turned toward her, his tone rough. "You." Lyra's gaze hardened. "Then they'll have to come through both of you first." The words held more strength than she felt, but neither Alpha questioned them. The bond between them thrummed, stronger now, almost instinctive. A silent rhythm that tied their hearts even as the world sought to tear them apart. Suddenly a loud crash echoed through the hall. The torches flickered, the air thickened, and the scent of blood wafted through the corridor. "Breach!" a guard shouted before his voice was silenced by a guttural snarl. Kaelith drew his blade in an instant, flames licking its edge as he sprinted for the door. Alaric followed, his movements silent and precise. Lyra reached for the bow strapped to her back, her heartbeat a steady drum in her ears. They burst into the main hall, and chaos greeted them. Shadow wolves poured through the shattered gates, their forms half-corporeal, their eyes glowing like dying stars. The guards fought valiantly, but for every wolf cut down, 2 more took its place. The air was thick with smoke, steel, and howls of fury. Kaelith became a blur of motion, his blade a burning arc slicing through one wolf after another. Alaric summoned frost with a sweep of his hand, encasing 3 in ice before shattering them to dust. Lyra fired arrow after arrow, each tipped with moonlight, her shots guided by instinct, by something deeper. Through the chaos, a familiar voice cut through the storm. Low, guttural, mocking, "Children of the Moonblood." Kaelith froze, recognizing it instantly. "Ravok!" The shadow Alpha stepped into the hall, rain dripping from his dark cloak, his eyes gleaming with crimson hunger. Around him the shadows thickened, coiling like serpents ready to strike. "You've grown strong," Ravok said, his gaze sweeping over them, "but not strong enough." Kaelith's blade flared brighter. "You'll regret coming here," Ravok chuckled, a sound that chilled even the firelight. "Regret? No, this is destiny." His claws extended, black as obsidian. "The moonblood must bleed before the veil can fall." He lunged. The clash that followed shook the hall. Fire met shadow, frost met darkness. Kaelith's strikes burned with fury. Alaric's ice froze the very air. But Ravok was more than a wolf. He was corruption incarnate, his form twisting and reforming with every blow. Lyra fired again, an arrow of pure light striking him in the chest. He staggered, growling, but did not fall. Then, in the chaos, the mark on Lyra's wrist ignited, not with pain, but with power. The light spread across her arm, into her bow, her eyes shining like twin moons. "Now!" she cried. Kaelith and Alaric responded instinctively. Fire and frost collided once more, not in conflict this time, but in unity. Their powers intertwined, merging with Lyra's moonlight in a blinding surge. Ravok roared as the energy struck him, tearing through the shadows that cloaked his form. For a moment his true face appeared, scarred, ancient, burning with rage, before he vanished into the darkness, leaving only the echo of his laughter. The hall fell silent, the rain outside softening to a steady whisper. Lyra fell to her knees, breathless, her mark fading once more. Kaelith caught her before she hit the floor, his expression torn between relief and fear. Alaric stared into the distance where Ravok had stood. "He's not dead," he said quietly. Kaelith's grip tightened. "No, he's waiting." Lyra lifted her gaze to the storm beyond the broken gates. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Then so are we." Outside, in the darkness of the forest, the shadow pack retreated, their howls merging into one long, haunting cry. The rise of the Shadow Pack had begun, and the War of Wolves had only just awakened. Chapter 9, Whispers of the Fallen. The rain had quieted to a mournful drizzle, falling like tears upon the ruins of the Draven stronghold. Smoke curled from the shattered gates, rising to meet the pale dawn that crept timidly across the sky. The air smelled of steel and ash and sorrow, the scent of victory laced with loss. Lyra stood amidst the wreckage, her cloak torn and her bow still in hand. Around her, the bodies of fallen wolves, Draven and Shadow alike, lay scattered across the stones. Her heart ached at the silence, the absence of familiar voices that once filled these halls with laughter, purpose, and pride. Now there was only the whisper of the wind and the low crackle of dying flames. Kael knelt beside a fallen soldier, his hand resting over the man's chest as his eyes dimmed with quiet fury. "We held them," he said hoarsely. "But at what cost?" Alaric stood a few paces away, his expression unreadable as he surveyed the carnage. "They weren't trying to win," he murmured. "They were testing us, probing our strength." Lyra turned to him, the exhaustion in her eyes replaced by something sharper. "Then Ravok's planning something bigger." Alaric nodded slowly. "The Shadow Pack's attack was just a distraction. He wanted us weakened." Kael rose, his hands still blood-stained. "Let him come. I'll tear his pack apart, piece by piece." Lyra's voice cut through his rage, steady though her hands trembled. "And if that's what he wants? If we're playing into his hands?" For a moment silence hung heavy between them. Then faintly a sound echoed from beyond the courtyard, a soft whimper, not the cry of a wolf but something smaller, fragile. Lyra turned first, instinct sharp. She followed the sound through the wreckage until she reached the collapsed eastern wing. Beneath a pile of fallen beams and stone, she saw a child, no more than 8 years old, his fur streaked with soot and his small hands trembling. His amber eyes met hers with fear and disbelief. "Easy," she whispered, kneeling beside him. "I'm here to help." Kael and Alaric joined her, clearing the debris with care. When the boy was free, he clung to Lyra's arm, trembling violently. "They came from the shadows," he stammered. "They said the moon had betrayed us. They took my sister." Lyra's throat tightened. "Where?" The boy shook his head. "They said they'd bring her to the hollow, where the veil bleeds." Alaric's eyes darkened. "The Hollow of Echoes," he said. "That place hasn't been touched in centuries." Kael frowned. "You know it?" Alaric hesitated. "It's where the first Alpha bound the darkness, and where the prophecy began." Lyra's gaze drifted toward the distant peaks hidden by mist. "Then that's where Ravok's going." Kael crossed his arms. "And that's where we'll find him." Later that night, after the wounded were tended and the dead laid to rest, Lyra stood alone on the citadel balcony. The moon hung low, pale and weary, its light catching the faint shimmer of her mark. The bond within her pulsed softly. She could feel the twins' presence even from afar. Their emotions were like distant echoes in her mind. Kael's simmering anger, Alaric's restrained grief. A gust of wind carried a whisper, faint but familiar. She turned sharply, scanning the darkness. "Lyra." The voice was not physical, it came from within the bond, from beyond it. Her mark flared, and before her eyes the world shifted. The balcony dissolved into mist, and she stood within a vast expanse of silver light. Figures shimmered in the distance, tall, ethereal, draped in moonfire. Among them stood a woman whose face Lyra had seen before, in visions, in whispers, in the shadowed halls of the archive. The first Alpha. Lyra breathed. The woman's eyes glowed with sorrow and power. "The veil is breaking," she said, "and when it falls, the shadows will not come alone." Lyra's heart pounded. "What do you mean? How do we stop it?" The first Alpha raised her hand, revealing a mark identical to Lyra's. You cannot stop it. You can only choose which side of it you stand upon." Her words echoed through the void, then the vision shattered. Lyra gasped, finding herself back on the balcony, her hand pressed to her chest. The night was still again, but her heart was not. Somewhere deep within her, a new truth had begun to stir, one she could neither name nor deny. Behind her, Alaric stepped into the moonlight. "You saw something," he said quietly. Lyra turned, her voice soft. "A warning, and a choice." Kaelith joined them moments later, his expression hard. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." Lyra looked between them. Fire and frost, brothers bound by fate, and herself, the heart that tethered them both. The bond thrummed again, stronger now, almost alive. As the first light of dawn crept over the mountains, the three stood side by side, unaware that far below in the hollow of echoes, Ravok was already waiting, his army swelling in the dark and his laughter rising like a promise through the mist. Chapter 10: The Hollow of Echoes. The night was unnaturally still. Fog rolled like living silk across the valley floor, swallowing moonlight, muffling the breath of trees, and weaving illusions from the ghosts of memory. The air was heavy with whispers, not voices of the living, but echoes of what had once been. The Hollow of Echoes, a place where the veil between memory and reality grew paper thin. Lyra felt it the moment her boots touched the frostbitten grass, a pulse, ancient, rhythmic, like a second heartbeat beneath her own. She shivered, though not from cold. Behind her, Kael's crimson aura flared briefly in the mist, while Raiden's blue glow shimmered with restrained caution. They were opposites in color, in energy and essence, yet here their presence felt painfully synchronized, as though the valley itself recognized them. "This place knows us," Raiden murmured, his voice hushed. "It remembers." Kael's jaw tightened. "Or it hungers." Lyra's gaze swept the hollow. The trees bent inward as if listening. Every branch seemed carved from shadow. Every whisper tugged at something deep in her chest. She could almost hear the laughter of her childhood, the cry of her mother, the first time she saw the moon bleed. They weren't just sounds, they were memories made alive. The hollow showed truths through illusion. A flicker of light rippled before her eyes. Suddenly she stood in a vision of the past, her mother kneeling beneath the moon, her hands painted in red light, chanting words Lyra could not remember. The twins were there too, younger, their eyes burning with that same unnatural glow. It was not coincidence that their fates had crossed, it was design. Lyra gasped, stumbling backward as the illusion dissolved into mist. Kael caught her arm before she fell, his touch steady but trembling. "Did you see it too?" he whispered, voice roughened by something more than fear. Raiden turned away, his eyes dark with old guilt. "I saw what I was never meant to see." The valley pulsed again, this time stronger. The earth beneath them thrummed like a living drum. Whispers merged into a low chant, deep and resonant. The hollow was awakening. Lyra pressed a hand to her chest. The moonblood mark beneath her skin burned faintly, and for the first time, it didn't feel like a curse. It felt like a key. The hollow was speaking to her, showing her fragments of a forgotten covenant, a bond forged in love, sealed in blood and shattered by betrayal. Kael's voice softened, almost reverent. "We're walking on sacred ground. Every echo here is a memory we buried." Raiden stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "Then maybe it's time to unearth them." The mist thickened until the world turned silver gray. Shapes began to form within it. Wolves carved from moonlight, circling them in silence. Their eyes glowed like stars, their movements graceful and mournful. These were not enemies. These were the ancestors of their kind, guardians of the old prophecy. Lyra fell to her knees, the weight of centuries pressing upon her. The lead wolf approached, lowering its head in acknowledgement. Its voice was a whisper inside her mind. The curse was never yours, child of the moon. It was the echo of love unfulfilled. Tears stung her eyes. The hollow's truth was cruel and kind in equal measure. Kael and Raiden both heard the echo, both froze. And in that moment, their shared silence said what words could not, that everything they fought against was tied to everything they once loved. As dawn crept over the horizon, the mist began to fade, but the hollow of echoes left its mark. Lyra's eyes now shimmered with twin hues, one red, one blue, the balance of fire and frost within her. The twins watched her, awed and uncertain. Something ancient had awoken within her, and in the distance, beneath the fading fog, the earth whispered one final promise. The past does not sleep forever. Chapter 11. Bloodlines of the Forgotten. The morning after the hollow felt wrong. Too still, too heavy, as though the air itself carried the weight of what they had seen. Mist still clung to the edges of the forest, soft and reluctant to leave. Every breath Lyra took seemed to hum with echoes from the night before, whispers of ancestors, fragments of forgotten vows, and that voice that had called her child of the moon. Kael walked ahead, silent, his crimson aura dimmer now, like a flame tempered by something he could not name. Raiden trailed behind, his blue energy pulsing faintly, cold and measured, yet there was unrest behind his calm. The valley had changed all of them, but it was Lyra who bore the greatest mark. Her eyes, now split between red and blue, reflected both brothers whenever she looked their way. A mirror neither could bear to face for long. They reached the edge of the hollow, where the fog parted to reveal a ruin, half-buried, ancient, and humming with faint runes. Symbols of the old bloodlines. The air shimmered faintly, as though the past itself resisted their touch. "This wasn't here before," Raiden murmured, crouching to trace a sigil carved into the stone. The mark glowed under his fingers, pulsing in recognition. Kael's gaze darkened. "It appears when the hollow accepts you. We've been chosen." Lyra knelt beside them, her hand trembling as she touched a rune carved in the shape of two wolves facing one another, a moon caught between them. The symbol flared bright, a mix of red and blue light merging into violet. The ground vibrated. The world dissolved around them. Suddenly they stood within a vision of the past, a great hall, silver banners fluttering beneath an endless moon. Wolves in human form gathered in silence, their faces noble and grim. At the center stood a woman draped in celestial white, her hair streaked with crimson and frost. Her eyes were Lyra's, the first moon blood. Her voice filled the air like song and thunder. Our bond was to bring balance, but balance cannot exist where love and power divide. Her gaze turned toward two men beside her, twin alphas, one wreathed in firelight, the other cloaked in frost. Kael, Raiden, their past lives. Lyra's heart clenched as she watched them argue, the words indistinct yet the emotion unmistakable. Love, betrayal, grief. The first moonblood raised her hands, her tears falling like shards of light. Then let it be bound by blood. Until love learns peace. The vision shattered like glass. The three of them stumbled back into the ruins, breathless. The sigils on the stone blazed with light before dimming to black. Kael's voice broke the silence first, raw and trembling. "We've lived this before." Raiden's tone was cold, almost bitter. "We're trapped in their curse. We were never meant to break it, only repeat it." Lyra shook her head, defiance burning through her fear. "Then I'll rewrite it." Her voice was steady, stronger than she felt. "If love began this, love will end it." The forest around them groaned, as if the land itself recoiled at her words. The light in her eyes flared. Violet now, brighter, dangerous. The mark beneath her skin throbbed in rhythm with her heart. She could feel the bloodlines awakening, ancient spirits stirring in answer to her defiance. Then the first scream tore through the valley. It wasn't human, it wasn't wolf, it was something older, the sound of the curse itself stirring, waking after centuries of slumber. Kael moved instinctively, drawing her behind him. Raiden's blade of frost shimmered into existence, cold vapor spiraling from its edge. From the mist emerged shadows that didn't belong to any living pack. Wolves with hollow eyes and bones that gleamed like iron. The forgotten ones. The remnants of those who had defied the prophecy and paid the price. Lyra's voice trembled. They're not here to fight. They're here to remember. The lead shadow stepped forward, bowing its skeletal head before her. A voice filled her mind, deep and ancient. Then remember well, Moonblood. For every truth you seek demands a sacrifice. The light flickered, the ground cracked. And as the echoes of the dead rose once more, Lyra realized the truth the Hollow had spared her from. The bloodline she carried was not only the key to peace, it was the weapon that could end them all. Chapter 12, The Awakening of Shadows. Night fell like a shroud, heavy and restless. The once quiet forest of the Hollow trembled with whispers that were no longer echoes but voices, countless, ancient, and angry. The wind itself howled with the language of the lost, carrying fragments of oaths, sworn and broken, long before any of them were born. Lyra stood at the heart of the ruins, her violet-lit eyes wide with both wonder and dread. Around her, the air pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, each thrum awakening another memory beneath the earth. The runes carved into the stones blazed again, and the mist began to rise once more. But this time, it was darker, laced with shades of crimson and blue that twisted into violet shadows. Kael and Raiden stood beside her, their postures rigid, their instincts screaming that something old and terrible was stirring. Yet neither moved away from her. They couldn't. The bond that tethered the three of them had become more than destiny. It was a force the world itself seemed to acknowledge. Then came the first tremor. The ground beneath them cracked open, and from its depths poured an energy that smelled of rain, blood, and ancient sorrow. Figures began to form within the mist, wolves with hollow eyes and ethereal forms, bound together by threads of shadow. The forgotten ones were no longer merely echoes. They were returning to life. Lyra's breath caught. They're feeding on the curse. Raiden's jaw clenched. No, they're the curse. Kael drew closer, the red in his aura flaring like a storm fire. Then we end it before it ends us. But the moment his foot struck the ground, the shadows recoiled, and then struck back. They moved faster than sight. Tendrils of dark energy lashed through the air, slamming Kael backward into a column of stone. Raiden barely deflected another with a surge of frost that froze the mist into jagged shards. Lyra tried to summon her power, but the mark on her chest blazed too bright, flooding her veins with light that hurt more than it healed. The world began to spin, past and present overlapping, reality bending like water. And in that chaos, the earth itself spoke through her. You were born from the bond of blood and betrayal. You are the bridge. You are the breaking. Her knees buckled. She fell, gasping, her palms sinking into soil that pulsed with life. Images flashed in her mind, a war waged under twin moons, the first Moonblood sacrificing herself to seal the shadows, and the twins, her twins, dying by each other's hands, again and again, a cycle that fed the darkness like a wound that refused to close. Kael staggered to his feet, blood staining his jaw. Lyra, fight it! Don't let it take you! Raiden's frost spread across the ground, creating a circle of protection around her. But the shadows pressed closer. their forms whispering promises in 1,000 forgotten tongues. Release us, child of moon and flame. We remember what you were. We remember what you owe. Lyra's scream shattered the night. Her power erupted in a blinding surge, light and shadow entwining in an explosion that shook the hollow to its core. When the brilliance faded, she was floating inches above the ground, her body surrounded by swirling violet energy. Neither Kael's fire nor Raiden's frost, but something entirely new. The shadows knelt. Kael's eyes widened. They're obeying her. Raiden stepped forward cautiously, his expression torn between awe and fear. No, not obeying. Recognizing, the lead shadow, the same skeletal wolf that had spoken before, lifted its head. The blood has awakened. The bridge is open once more. And then, as the forest trembled and the air grew thick with dark light, Lyra heard another voice, deeper, familiar, echoing through her bones. My child, you have done what I could not. The voice of the first moonblood. Tears streaked her cheeks as the realization dawned. The curse wasn't breaking, it was evolving. Every step they took toward freedom only drew them closer to the awakening of something older than destiny itself. Kael reached out for her, his hand trembling. Lyra, come back to us! Her eyes opened, blazing with violet fire. I can't, not yet. The shadows remember me, and I remember them. The earth pulsed one last time, and the entire hollow seemed to bow. Above them, the moon turned crimson, the blood moon reborn, and in that moment, as power flooded the air and the first roars of the awakened shadows filled the night, one truth became clear. The war they feared had never ended. It had only been sleeping, waiting for her to wake it. Chapter 13, The Crimson Oath. The night bled silver as the blood moon began to rise, its light shimmering across the mist-veiled valley like spilled wine. Every heartbeat of the forest echoed with a dangerous rhythm, an ancient pulse that set the air trembling. The ritual had begun long before any of them stepped into the clearing, but now, fate itself seemed to hold its breath. Lyra stood at the edge of the ceremonial circle, her pale skin glowing under the crimson light. Shadows of ancient runes pulsed faintly across the ground, etched in stone and bound by blood older than time. The wind tangled her hair, black as midnight, carrying with it the scent of the storm and the faint iron tang of power. Her heart pounded, not from fear but from the gravity of what she was about to do. Kael stood to her right, his jaw tense, his wolf barely contained beneath his skin. His golden eyes flickered between light and shadow, every muscle ready to defy the ritual if it meant keeping her safe. Across from him, Raiden stood like a carved statue of night itself, his silver gaze unreadable, his aura cold, sharp, and ancient. Together they formed a triangle around the altar, the last pieces of a prophecy set in motion centuries ago. Lyra, Kael said, his voice raw and low. You don't have to do this. We'll find another way. Raiden's tone was colder. There is no other way. The Crimson Oath demands her blood, or it will take all of ours. The words hung heavy in the air. Between them lay the moonblood dagger, its blade whispering promises of power and doom. Lyra's hand trembled as she reached for it, her reflection fractured across its gleaming edge. The dagger's hilt pulsed faintly, resonating with her heartbeat. This is what I was born for, she whispered, her voice trembling but sure. To bind what was broken, to unite what was divided. As she stepped forward, lightning cracked above, illuminating the forest canopy. Shadows twisted and shifted, wolves hidden in the dark, their glowing eyes watching in reverence and fear. The wind carried whispers of the old tongue, the language of the moon spirits, now long forgotten by most living souls. Kael moved closer, his voice desperate. Lyra, if you do this, you'll belong to the moon's will forever. There will be no coming back. Her gaze softened. Maybe I was never meant to come back. Before he could answer, Raiden lifted his hand, chanting in a language that made the air vibrate. The runes flared to life, glowing crimson, and the dagger rose between them, floating, spinning slowly. Blood magic crackled in the air, raw and volatile. Lyra's eyes glowed faintly as she took a step closer. The wind roared. The dagger descended, hovering before her chest, waiting for her to make the final move. She looked at Kael, his golden eyes blazing with anguish. Then at Raiden, cold, unyielding, yet filled with an emotion he refused to name. Two souls, two shadows, both tied to her fate. By the moon and by the blood, Lyra whispered, voice steady. I give what I am to restore what was lost. The blade met her palm, slicing deep. Crimson drops fell onto the runes, sizzling as they met stone. The ground trembled, a howl split the sky, deep, resonant and mournful. The wolves around the circle joined in, their voices rising in a haunting symphony. Kael reached for her, but Raiden held him back. Let it bind her, Raiden growled. Let it choose. The light burst outward, blinding, wrapping Lyra in threads of scarlet flame. Her scream echoed through the forest, not of pain, but of awakening. When the light dimmed, she stood tall, her eyes now glowing with twin hues, one golden, one silver. The brothers stared, speechless. The moon has chosen, Lyra said softly, her voice layered with power. But it is not done with us yet. The blood moon flared once more, casting their shadows long and deep. Somewhere in the distance, war drums began to beat. The crimson oath was sealed, and with it the beginning of the end. Chapter 14. The Wolf War begins. The blood moon lingered in the sky like an unhealed wound, its crimson glow bleeding across the land. The forest that once whispered in quiet harmony now trembled with the growl of beasts and the clash of fates. The crimson oath had been sealed, but peace did not follow. It never could. For in its wake came war. Lyra stood upon the ridge overlooking the valley, her heart pounding as she watched the armies gather below. Shadows moved like waves, wolves shifting from flesh to fur in the flicker of moonlight. The twin packs had come to fight, not for honor, but for survival. Every howl carried grief, every breath the weight of the oath she had taken. The wind carried the scent of blood before a single blade was drawn. Below, Kael stood at the front of his warriors, golden armor glinting faintly beneath the red sky. His eyes burned with fury and heartbreak, a leader torn between love and duty. To his left, Raiden commanded the darker host, wolves cloaked in black, silent and calculating. His gaze met Lyra's from across the distance, and for a moment everything else fell away. The memory of the ritual still haunted her, the way the dagger burned in her hand, the way the moon chose her and bound them all in blood and destiny. She could feel their power pulsing through her veins now, a symphony of chaos and light. But with that power came pain, a constant twisting reminder that she was no longer just human nor entirely wolf. She was something in between, something the world had not yet learned to name. A horn sounded. The sound was low, ancient, and final. The war had begun. Kael's army surged forward first, a storm of claws and rage. The ground shook as wolves collided, fur against fur, teeth against bone. The air filled with roars and snarls, a violent chorus echoing through the valley. Sparks flew as blades met under the moonlight, and the scent of iron filled the night. Raiden moved like shadow incarnate, swift, merciless, precise. His wolves fought with discipline and silence, striking in coordinated bursts. Kael's warriors, fierce and loyal, answered with raw power and emotion, their strength unmatched in close combat. blood soaked the earth until it ran like dark rivers beneath their feet. From her vantage point, Lyra watched with her heart breaking. The power of the Crimson Oath burned within her, begging to be unleashed, yet she hesitated. Every soul down there was bound to her choice, her destiny. If she intervened, she could end it, but if she did, she might destroy them all. Then she saw him, Kael, pinned beneath a dark wolf twice his size. The beast's fangs gleamed as it lunged. Without thinking, Lyra leapt from the ridge. The air rushed around her as she landed, her eyes blazing with twin lights, gold and silver. The battlefield stilled for just a heartbeat. Power erupted from her palms, a shock wave that threw wolves aside like leaves in a storm. Lightning crackled in the air as her voice rose, ancient, commanding, divine. Enough. The word trembled through the valley, echoing in the bones of every creature. The moon itself seemed to listen. Wolves fell back, trembling, eyes wide with reverence and fear. Kael stumbled to his feet, his chest heaving. Raiden stood opposite him, blood staining his arm, his silver eyes glowing faintly. Between them stood Lyra, her aura a storm of fire and frost. "This war is madness," she said, her voice breaking yet strong. "The moon did not choose us to destroy each other." Kael's gaze softened for a moment, a flicker of the man she loved. But before he could speak, a sudden explosion shook the ground. From the edge of the forest, a new army emerged. Strangers clad in obsidian armor, their leader tall, cloaked, and radiating an energy older than either Alpha. Raiden's eyes widened. "No, it can't be." The newcomer's voice was deep and resonant. "The Crimson Oath was never yours to wield, child of the moon. It was mine." The wolves howled once more, not in rage this time, but in terror. Lyra turned, her heart pounding, the weight of her destiny pressing heavier than ever. The true war had only just begun. Chapter 15. The Forgotten King. The night deepened into a silence that seemed to swallow the world whole. Smoke rose from the battlefield in serpentine wisps, carrying the scent of blood and burnt earth. The wolves stood motionless now, torn, panting, their golden and silver eyes flickering with uncertainty. Even the moon, still shrouded in crimson, seemed dimmer, as though holding its breath for what was about to unfold. From the far end of the valley, the stranger stepped forward. His armor was black as obsidian, etched with runes that pulsed faintly with red light. His cloak trailed behind him like living shadow, each step resonating with ancient power. The air around him shimmered, distorted, heavy, charged with the essence of ages long forgotten. Lyra felt it before he even spoke, the unmistakable pull of blood calling to blood. "You are her," the man said, his voice deep enough to shake the air itself. "The last child of the moon bloodline." "My blood!" Lyra's breath caught in her throat. Her fingers trembled as visions flashed before her eyes, fragments of forgotten memory. A silver crown shattered in flame, a wolf of starlight howling in the dark, and a woman whose eyes mirrored her own. Kael's growl rumbled low beside her. "Who are you?" The stranger smiled, slow and bitter. "Once I was your king." He removed his helm, revealing hair as pale as moonlight and eyes the color of dying fire. His face bore the marks of centuries, a beauty carved by time, sorrow, and wrath. They called Metheron, the first wolf, the one who bound the moon to our blood. A murmur rippled through the wolves. Even Raiden took a step back, his composure cracking for the first time. "That's impossible," he muttered. "The first wolf died in the great eclipse, millennia ago." Atheron's gaze swept over him. Death cannot claim what it never created. His eyes turned to Lyra again, softer now but infinitely more dangerous. "The Crimson Oath was forged from my heart's blood, child. It was meant to seal my legacy, not to enslave it. You awakened it, but you do not yet understand what you've set free." The wind rose, carrying whispers through the trees. Lyra's heartbeat quickened. "If you're truly who you say you are, then why attack us? Why bring more death?" "Because," Atheron said, his tone sharp as a blade, "your bond to both alphas has corrupted the balance. The moon chose you, but it was I who made the choice possible. You carry two shadows within one soul. That cannot exist." Kael stepped forward, defiant. "Then you'll have to go through me." The ancient king regarded him with a faint smirk. "I already have." He lifted a hand and the air shimmered. Kael was thrown backward, crashing into the rock wall behind him with a crack of stone. Lyra cried out, running to him, but Atheron's presence pressed against her like a physical weight. "Do you feel it, Lyra?" he asked quietly. "The power that burns in your veins? That is my gift, and my curse. It will consume you unless you learn to master it. Come with me. Let me teach you before it's too late." Raiden's voice cut through the storm. "She belongs with us." Atheron turned his gaze on him, and for a fleeting moment there was something like sadness in the ancient king's eyes. "You sound like I once did." The ground trembled. Lightning arced across the sky, splitting the clouds in a jagged blaze of silver. Lyra felt the world tilt, the forest, the valley, the wolves, all blurring into a dizzy haze. Her knees buckled as the power inside her surged uncontrollably. Kael's hand caught hers, his touch grounding her even as his strength faltered. "Lyra, stay with me." Her vision blurred, but Atheron's voice reached her, calm and resonant through the chaos. "Your destiny is older than your love, my child. The moon remembers what you have forgotten." With that, he vanished in a swirl of black flame, leaving only silence and the faint echo of ancient magic behind. Lyra collapsed to her knees, tears burning her eyes. The truth had been unleashed, and with it, the chains of her past. Above, the blood moon dimmed to silver once more, but its light no longer felt pure. It was tainted, just like her fate. Kael gathered her into his arms as Raiden watched, silent and haunted. None of them spoke, for there were no words strong enough to name what had just awakened. And far beyond the valley, in the ruins of an ancient temple, Atheron's shadow knelt before a throne of bones and whispered to the dark. Chapter 16, The Shadow Prophecy. Dawn broke reluctantly over the valley, its light thin and cold, bleeding through the lingering smoke of battle. The world felt heavier now, muted, uncertain. The once thriving forest lay scarred, and silence had replaced the howls that had filled the night. The crimson oath still pulsed faintly beneath the soil, a reminder that the war had only shifted, not ended. Lyra awoke in the remnants of the temple Kael's warriors had reclaimed. Her dreams had been filled with silver flames and shadows with eyes like dying stars. The memory of Atheron's voice still echoed in her mind, calm, knowing, impossible to silence. "You carry two shadows within one soul." She touched the mark on her palm where the dagger had cut her. It burned faintly beneath the skin, pulsing like a heartbeat. The power within her was growing, wild and restless. She could feel it now, two currents of energy twisting together, fighting for dominance. Kael's warmth, Raiden's cold fire, and something deeper still, something ancient. The door creaked open. Kael entered, his armor gone, his expression weary. He had not slept. His golden eyes softened when he saw her sitting upright, but the shadow of worry never left his face. "You should rest," he said quietly. Lyra shook her head. "I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see him." Kael sat beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Atheron?" She nodded. "He called me his blood, said the power in me was his curse." Kael's jaw tightened. "Then we'll find a way to break it, whatever it takes." Before Lyra could respond, the temperature in the room dropped. Frost laced across the stone walls, and the candles flickered out. A low hum vibrated through the floor, familiar, haunting. Raiden stepped from the shadows, his expression unreadable. "We don't have time for comfort," he said, his voice calm but urgent. "The moon seers have spoken." Lyra frowned. "The seers?" Raiden nodded, eyes glinting like silver in the dim light. "They've seen the return of the shadow prophecy. It speaks of a child of dual blood, a wolf born of light and dark, who will either save or end the line of the Moonbloods." His gaze locked with hers. "It's you, Lyra." The words sank into her like ice. "And what happens if I fail?" Raiden's silence was answer enough. Kael stood abruptly. "Prophecies don't decide who we are. She's not bound by their words." Raiden turned to him, anger flaring beneath his composure. "You think this is about belief? Atheron is already moving. His army grows with every fallen wolf he turns. The prophecy is not just a warning, it's a countdown." Thunder rolled in the distance, though the sky was clear. Lyra rose to her feet, her voice trembling but steady. "Then tell me what it says." Raiden hesitated, then spoke softly, reciting the words from memory. Before they could say more, a low rumble shook the temple walls. Dust rained from the ceiling. From outside came the sound of howls, not of war, but of pain. Lyra rushed to the window. The forest below was alive with movement, shadows rippling through the mist. Wolves twisted and fell, consumed by black fire. The air crackled with the same energy she had felt in Atheron's presence. "He's calling them," she whispered. "He's calling me." Raiden drew his blade, its edge glinting with frost. "Then we meet him halfway." Kael stepped forward, his hand closing around Lyra's. "Not until we know what we're facing. We move at dawn." Lyra's gaze stayed fixed on the forest, the pulse in her palm beating faster. She could feel Atheron's voice inside her mind, distant but growing stronger. "The prophecy is not your curse, my daughter, it is your crown." And as the first light of day touched the horizon, Lyra knew whatever awaited them next would decide not just their fates, but the future of every living soul bound to the moon. Chapter 17. The Moon Seer's Vision. The journey to the sacred mountains began under a bruised sky, heavy with the scent of rain and magic. The wind carried whispers through the trees, old tongues murmuring of fates entwined and promises broken. The path before them was steep and winding, carved through black stone that seemed to hum with unseen energy. Few ever dared to approach the mountains of the seers, for they were said to exist at the edge of the living world, where the veil between shadow and soul grew thin. Lyra rode ahead, her cloak whipping in the wind. Her thoughts were a storm of questions and dread. The prophecy's words echoed ceaselessly in her mind, bound by blood, betrayed by love. Each syllable seemed to sink deeper, wrapping around her heart like chains. Kael and Raiden followed close behind, their tension palpable. Once brothers in spirit, now divided by power, by love, by destiny. The silence between them was sharp enough to draw blood. After hours of climbing, the mist grew thick. Strange lights flickered in the fog, blue, ghostly, dancing between the trees. Lyra's wolf stirred uneasily within her, warning of ancient presence. Then, without a sound, 3 figures emerged from the mist. The Moon Seers. They were tall and ageless, draped in robes woven from starlight itself. Their eyes glowed faintly, one gold, one silver, one pale as moonstone. When they spoke, their voices harmonized as if 3 beings shared one thought. "Child of shadow and flame," they intoned, bowing slightly. "You walk the path that divides creation. The prophecy breathes through you." Lyra dismounted, her heart racing. "Tell me what it means," she said, her voice trembling. "Tell me how to stop what's coming." The The seers exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Then the eldest raised her hand, and the mists parted. A shimmering pool appeared between them, its surface reflecting not their faces, but scenes of what was and what might be. Lyra saw herself beneath a shattered moon, her eyes blazing with light and darkness intertwined. She saw Kael, bloodied and broken, reaching for her, Raiden standing over him, blade in hand, sorrow etched into his face, and behind them all, a throne of bones upon which sat Atheron crowned in fire. "No," she whispered, stepping back, "that can't be true." The seer's voice was soft but resolute. "Prophecy is not truth but potential. It reveals what may come if the heart remains unguarded." Kael's fists clenched. "Then tell us how to change it." The middle seer turned her gaze upon him. "Love alters all things, but it is also the key to ruin. The heart of an alpha may bind or break the child of prophecy. Be wary where you place your faith." Raiden stepped closer, his voice low. "And Atheron? What is he?" The youngest seer's expression darkened. "He is the firstborn of the moon's curse, banished beyond the veil, sustained by hatred and grief. When the crimson oath was broken, his prison cracked. Now he seeks to reclaim what was her." All eyes turned to Lyra. She felt the weight of their words like a stone on her chest. "If I am his blood," she said, "then what am I destined to become?" The eldest seer moved forward, placing a cool hand on Lyra's forehead. "That, child, depends on which shadow you choose to follow. The one born of love or the one born of fear." The vision rippled again, and Lyra glimpsed another future, herself standing between Kael and Raiden, the world burning behind them, the moon fractured above. In her hand, the moonblood dagger gleamed once more. The seers stepped back, their forms beginning to fade. "The time is coming," they whispered in unison. "When the blood moon rises thrice, the final choice shall be made. Until then, beware the voice that calls itself mercy. It may be the hand of ruin." The mist closed in, swallowing them whole. Only silence remained. Lyra turned to Kael and Raiden, her eyes glistening. "They showed me the end," she whispered, "and I don't know if I can stop it." Kael took her hand, his voice rough. "Then we'll stop it together." Raiden's gaze lingered on the distant horizon, where thunder rolled like a heartbeat. "The seers spoke of 3 blood moons," he murmured. "2 have already risen." Lightning tore across the sky, the wind howled, and somewhere beyond the mountains, in the ruins of Atheron's stronghold, the first drums of war began to sound again. Chapter 18. The Throne of Ashes. Far beyond the mist-veiled mountains, where the sun bled into the horizon and the land turned to scorched ruin, Atheron stirred upon his throne of ash and bone. His fortress, once the proud citadel of the first Alphas, now stood as a mausoleum to all things lost. The air was thick with cinders and whispers, the scent of decay and dark magic curling through every hall. Yet, amid the desolation, there was movement, a pulse, a gathering storm. In the great chamber, flames burned black within their sconces, fueled not by oil, but by the remnants of souls consumed. Shadows crawled like living things across the cracked marble floor. At the throne's base knelt the remnants of Atheron's warband, shifters long corrupted by his bloodline, their eyes hollow, their spirits bound. Atheron rose, his armor gleaming like obsidian, etched with sigils older than the moon itself. His eyes glowed red as dying stars. The voice that left his lips was smooth, melodic, and utterly merciless. "The seers have spoken," he murmured, tracing a clawed hand along the armrest of his throne. "The child walks toward her awakening. My blood calls to her, and soon she will answer." Before him knelt his general, a beast of enormous stature named Darius, whose wolf form was said to be forged from smoke and flame. "My lord," Darius rumbled, bowing his head, "our scouts have seen movement in the north. The twin alphas travel with her." Atheron's lips curved into something like a smile. "Good. Let them come. Let them believe they can change fate. Every step they take brings her closer to me." He turned toward the grand mural carved into the wall, a depiction of the moon breaking into shards, its light spilling upon the earth. The prophecy was never meant to save the world, it was meant to cleanse it. He extended his hand, and the black flames around him flared. Out of the air itself, a figure coalesced, a woman draped in tattered silk, her eyes twin pools of void. "My queen," Atheron said softly. Selene, the shadow of the first Luna, bowed her head. Her voice was a whisper, but it carried the chill of eternity. "She bears your mark, Atheron. You can feel it, can't you? The pull between your soul and hers." "She resists it," he replied, stepping down from the dais. "But resistance is the first step towards surrender. Her dreams are already mine. Her power soon will be too." Selene moved closer, her fingers brushing his chest plate. "And when she becomes yours, what then? Will you love her or destroy her as you did me?" For a heartbeat the great hall fell silent, then Atheron's smile returned, cold, cruel, yet touched with sorrow. "Love and ruin are but two sides of the same blade, my dear. And I have learned to wield both." He turned from her and raised his hand once more. At his gesture the ground trembled. From the depths of the earth molten cracks spread across the floor, and through them rose the shapes of monstrous wolves, creatures of shadow and flame, eyes burning like coals. "The blood moon shall rise thrice," Atheron intoned. "Two have already marked the heavens. When the third ascends, I will march upon the living. The twin alphas will kneel or burn. And she?" His voice softened, almost reverent. "She will stand beside me, whether by will or by chains." The infernal wolves howled in unison, their cries echoing across the barren plains. The sound traveled far, carried by winds that smelled of ash and death, reaching even the distant forests where Lyra and her companions rested. That night, Lyra awoke screaming, the echo of that howl buried deep in her mind. Kael rushed to her side, pulling her close. "It's just a dream," he whispered. But his own heart raced, for he had heard it too. Raiden stood by the fire, staring toward the horizon. His eyes caught the faint shimmer of red where the moon touched the clouds. "The third blood moon," he murmured, voice trembling with dread. "It's coming." Chapter 19, The Blood Moon Rising. The night sky bled crimson. Across the vast expanse of the Shadowlands, the third blood moon began its ascent, burning like an open wound in the heavens. Its light spilled over forests and mountains, painting the world in shades of scarlet and silver. Every creature, wolf, man, or beast, felt its call in their bones. The prophecy's final breath had begun. Lyra stood upon a high ridge overlooking the valley, her hair tangled in the wind, her heart thundering with a fear she could not name. The dreams had come again, visions of fire, blood, and a crown of flame. She could feel Atheron's presence like a shadow beneath her skin, whispering her name, urging her to surrender. Kael approached quietly, his gaze locked on the glowing horizon. "It's begun," he said, voice low. "The seers were right. The third moon rises and fate won't wait any longer." Raiden joined them, his silver eyes catching the moonlight like blades. "Then we face it head on," he said firmly. "No more running, no more fear. We end this tonight." The three stood together as the first tremor shook the earth. Distant thunder rolled, but it was not the storm's call. It was the sound of war drums. Across the valley from the ruins of Atheron's fortress, dark flames erupted skyward. Thousands of eyes, feral, burning, unholy, blinked open in the darkness. Lyra's wolf snarled within her. The pull between her and Atheron grew stronger, tearing at the edges of her soul. She pressed a hand to her chest, gasping. "He's calling me," she whispered. "He wants me to come to him." Kael grabbed her shoulders. "You're not his," he growled. "You never will be." His touch burned with desperate warmth, grounding her as the wind howled with the scent of ash and death. But Raiden's voice was softer, sadder. "Kael, if she doesn't go to him, he'll come here. He'll burn the world to reach her." The truth in his words settled like frost. From the shadows the pack gathered, wolves from every corner of the realm, called by the same blood oath that bound them to their alphas. Their eyes reflected the crimson moon, their growls harmonizing into a battle cry that shook the stars. Kael lifted his blade, the steel catching the red light. "Then we fight," he said. "For her, for the world." Raiden unsheathed his twin daggers, his wolf half rising beneath his skin. "For the pack, for the promise we made." And Lyra, her eyes glowing with a mix of gold and shadow, took a deep breath. "For the choice that will end it all." The armies collided beneath a blood-soaked moon. Fire met fang, light met darkness. Kael tore through Shadow Beast with unrelenting fury, his every strike fueled by love and rage. Raiden fought beside him, his movements a blur of precision and sacrifice. The ground was slick with ash and blood. Lyra moved like a tempest among them. Her power surged, no longer contained. Winds howled at her command. Fire danced from her fingertips. Yet with every burst of light, the darkness in her heart grew stronger, whispering Atheron's name, and far across the battlefield he appeared. Atheron stood amidst his legion of shadow wolves, his armor glowing with infernal light. The blood moon crowned him like a god. "Come to me, my daughter," he called, his voice carrying across the chaos. "Embrace what you were meant to be." Lyra froze, torn between two worlds. The wolves clashed around her, Kael shouting her name, Raiden bleeding but unbroken. The prophecy's final verse echoed in her mind. "When the third moon bleeds, the heart shall choose its master." She turned toward Atheron. His eyes, mirrors of her own darkness, held her captive. Then she looked back at Kael and Raiden, at the love, the pain, the hope that burned in their eyes. Lightning split the sky. The earth cracked beneath her feet, and in that moment, Lyra screamed, a cry that shattered the air, half human, half wolf. The energy that exploded from her chest sent shockwaves through the battlefield, silencing all. The blood moon pulsed once, twice, then turned black. Every living thing froze. Even Atheron looked skyward, surprise flickering across his face. Lyra collapsed, her power draining into the earth. Kael caught her before she fell, cradling her against him. "Stay with me," he whispered. "Please, Lyra, stay." Her eyes fluttered open, their gold dimming. "It's not over," she breathed. "He's still coming." And beyond the shattered clouds, something vast and ancient began to stir. Chapter 20. Eclipse of the Heart. Silence fell over the battlefield. The blood moon, once crimson and alive with power, now hung black and hollow in the night sky. The stars themselves seemed to have vanished, swallowed by the churning darkness that rolled from the horizon. Every living creature, wolf and man alike, stood still, suspended in the eerie calm before the final storm. Kael cradled Lyra in his arms, her skin pale, her breath faint. The pulse of her magic had torn through worlds, shattering the balance between light and shadow. Around them, the remnants of both armies watched in fearful awe as the ground cracked open and the air shimmered with the birth of something ancient. Raiden stumbled forward, blood running down his temple. "Kael," he rasped, "she's fading. Her power, it's consuming her." Kael's voice was hoarse. "She's stronger than this." He looked down at her face, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "She has to be." But even as he spoke, the earth trembled. A fissure of red light split the sky, and from it descended Atheron, his wings of flame unfurled, his eyes blazing like dying suns. The throne of ashes rose behind him, carried by shadows that writhed and screamed. "Do you see now?" Atheron's voice rolled like thunder. "The world itself bends to our blood. You are mine, Lyra, you always have been." Lyra's eyes fluttered open. "No," she whispered, her voice weak but defiant. "I am not yours, I am not anyone's weapon." Atheron extended his hand, and the black crown materialized in his grasp. "Then wear it," he said, his tone soft, almost loving, "and rule beside me. End the pain, end the war. Together we can unmake the world that rejected us." Kael stepped between them, blade drawn. "She'll never stand beside you." Atheron regarded him with something like pity. "You think you can protect her? You, who can barely protect yourself." He raised his arm, and the shadow flame burst outward. Kael was thrown back, his sword clattering to the ground. Raiden caught him before he fell. "Get up, brother," he urged. "We're not done yet." Kael staggered to his feet, his body trembling but his will unbroken. The twin alphas stood side by side once more, their eyes locked on the god that threatened to consume all. For the first time since their bond was shattered, they fought as one. Their wolves roared to life, Kael's silver and Raiden's black, fusing into a single storm of light and shadow. They lunged at Atheron, striking with everything they had. The clash shook the heavens. Lyra rose slowly, her form surrounded by flickering embers. Her heartbeat echoed in the air, merging with the rhythm of the dying moon. "No more," she whispered. She lifted her hand, and the moon-blood dagger appeared in her grasp, its blade forged of light and darkness, balance incarnate. As Atheron turned toward her, his eyes widened. "You cannot destroy me," he hissed. "I am in your blood." Lyra stepped forward, the dagger gleaming. "Then I'll end the bloodline." She drove the blade into her own chest. A scream tore the night apart, not of pain but of release. Light erupted from her body, golden and pure, merging with the darkness that poured from Atheron's form. Their powers intertwined, battling, consuming, purging. The world trembled as the moon itself began to crack. Kael and Raiden shouted her name, but she could no longer hear them. In that vast silence between heartbeats, Lyra stood before Atheron, not as his daughter, not as his heir, but as the bridge between all things broken. He reached for her, his expression almost human. "Lyra." She smiled faintly. "Rest, father." The light consumed him. The explosion that followed tore the sky apart. The blood moon shattered into 1,000 fragments, falling like embers upon the world. The darkness receded, the flames died, and silence once again reigned. When the smoke cleared, Lyra's body lay still at the heart of the battlefield. Kael knelt beside her, tears streaking his dirt-stained face. Raiden stood behind him, his jaw clenched, his eyes wet with grief and pride. Then, as dawn broke, a faint light pulsed in her chest. Kael gasped. "She's—" Lyra's eyes opened slowly. The gold within them had dimmed, replaced by a soft glow of silver moonlight. "It's over," she whispered. "He's gone." Raiden exhaled a trembling breath. "No, not gone, freed." The three stood together as the first rays of sunlight kissed the land that had nearly died. The pack began to stir, lifting their voices in a mourning howl that turned slowly into one of hope. Kael looked at Lyra, his voice quiet but sure. "What now?" She gazed at the horizon where the sun rose over the ruins. "Now, we rebuild, and maybe this time we choose our fate." As the light grew, Lyra took their hands, one in each of hers. The war was over, but the story of their hearts had just begun. Thank you for joining me on this unforgettable journey through Shadows of the Twin Alphas. Your time, your imagination and your heart made this world come alive. If Lyra's courage, Kael's devotion, Raiden's fire, and the battle between destiny and love touched you in any way, please don't forget to like. It helps this story reach more listeners. Share. Let your friends step into this world with you. Subscribe so you never miss the next chapter, the next world, or the next adventure we create together. Your support means the world. Your presence keeps these stories breathing, and your love inspires the next legend to rise. Until our next tale, stay wild, stay brave, and stay with me.